Hey, there we go. It is Thursday, August 31st. Thank you guys for joining in on our last backdrop developer meeting before code freeze. So that's exciting. We have agreement that we're working out with the lawyer from the Software Freedom Conservancy. We've got a question for him and he hasn't followed up yet. So I've been like sending annoying emails. Hopefully we'll get a response soon and then we'll be able to move forward on that. This week, there are a ton of new contributed projects for Backdrop, including a port of UberCart module, which is pretty exciting. So anyone who needs UberCart on their Drupal 7 site now can upgrade that site to Backdrop. And I think we should move directly into talking about Backdrop progress since we're coming up on the 1.8 release and people are probably curious to know about what they should help with between now and then. So Nate, why don't you take it over and talk about some of these issues?
Alrighty. Okay, let's start with 1.73, which will be the last bug fix release on the 1.7 minor version. We have a regression that we discovered in 1.7.2 that affects drop buttons. That drop buttons are positioned strangely in some cases, especially in the views UI. It's especially noticeable right now. And that issue is 2806. That has a pull request that fixes the views UI, but there's still some minor overflow issues in other places where drop buttons are used. And so that issue right now, we're pondering if we should just revert what was in 1.7.2 entirely, or stay the course and try to finish fixing the issues that have been discovered. Gregory, your feedback on that might actually be kind of useful. I think yours was the issue that suggested that we flip it in the first place, which, yeah, it's a mixed bag. So that's 2806. We'll need to get that finished before our next release. Let's see. Also kind of related, this one I'm not totally familiar with. Layout UI drop buttons are not mobile friendly. Mobile, like a layout thing, or is this all drop buttons? I think it's, oh.
So it's specifically on the layout UI. Drop buttons don't work very well on mobile. I think it's been like a long-standing bug that just never had an issue. People have been reporting it's been an issue for a while. So it's not related to the fix that we just put in. But since now people are noticing drop buttons, that's how it came up recently. So if we, I don't know what we're going to do for a fix for our drop buttons globally, but if we find something that also fixes this, that would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it might be just because there's a lot going on with the layout UI that blocks are drag and droppable, and then the drop buttons themselves, like opening and closing, I could see some conflicts happening there. Okay, other things, 1.7.3 include a bucket of cross-ports. We've got 4 issues regarding cross-ports. 2013, which is a bunch of old cross-ports from Drupal 7.50 and previous versions. And then 27, 74, 75, and 76, which are 3 other issues for doing cross-ports. I think right now our intention is that we're putting most of our focus into 1.8 related issues, and then we'll continue doing the cross-ports after code freeze, which is coming up here on Monday. So let's get to 1.8, which is the next minor release that is coming out September 15th. So just a little bit over 2 weeks from today, which is kind of exciting. And we've got a lot of items that are outstanding that we'd still like to get wrapped up. And to be clear, our completing these things is going to be August 4th, Monday, which is Labor Day in the United States. That will be our deadline for completing functionality that will go into 1.8, and then we'll spend the remainder of the 2 weeks to fix up any bugs that we may have introduced during that time. So the first item that we've got on the hit list here is improving media support, which has a meta issue at 1448. Oh, sorry, did I say August 4th? I meant September 4th. Yes, thank you, Olaf. September 4th is code freeze. So the meta issue is 1448 for improving media support. And primarily, it looks like for 1.8, what that really means is adding and editing files independently of any kind of content. And so the first one that looks like it'll probably be complete is the ability to edit an existing file, which is 2796, which is functionally complete, but needs some more tests to ensure that it behaves the way that we expect it to do. We have some questions around what's been implemented there. Like we might need to make some changes in the way that it functions, but overall, it's actually it's working in one way that could be committable, but we need to evaluate if that's going to be its final functionality. Following up on that one is issue 2633, which allows you to upload a file independently. And this one still needs quite a bit of work, actually. That right now it's a kind of a complex multi-step form to upload a file. And we'd like to simplify that process down a bit. The reason it's complicated and the way it's built out is because it's ported directly from file entity in 777. And I think that there's a lot of concern that that process is not nearly as straightforward as we would like it to be for Backdrop. Also, in the media library issues, things that are in progress, the ability to have files be fieldable is issue 2632. And that functionality, it's be kicked into the next release, I think. But it's possible, but we've only got a couple of days left here. So I think that it's likely to be postponed for 1.9. Those are the most likely ones for the media library functionality. There's still a bunch of other items that we would like to continue beyond that. And you can track all of those issues in issue 1448. And we'll probably just continue working on media library in the next 1.9 version. Let's see, other things in 1.8, things like basically pull requests that are close to being completed. Restoring functionality to date module that allows you to page your content by its date is issue 2766. And that's just porting functionality over from the D7 date module. It's close, it's functional, but it needs a little code style cleanup and work on the actual issue itself, or on the implementation. Let's see, a small change to module filter is 2715. That issue needs a little bit of work. It's throwing some PHP notices. There's a couple of items relating to CSS styling. 2804 and 2803 both affect the way that the installer looks when you're running through installing Backdrop for the first time. 2803 is a revamp of the progress bar styling, and that one has been merged since last week. So that's great. We'll probably off of our bucket list, but for those that haven't had a chance to take a look at it, 2803 introduces a new styling for the progress bar, which affects everywhere the progress bar is shown, including the installer. 04 restyles task lists. And task lists are kind of uncommon, but you see them in two particular places during the installer and when using the project installer module to install new modules. And so that has a pull request that introduces some new styling to make it look more like the rest of the 7 theme. But there's some suggestions on there on implementation that will probably end up kind of taking a different approach on that one to implement some design recommendations. Let's see, other items for 1.8. A minor feature is fixing the way that Path Auto handles curly quotes and hyphens, which is 2765. A little bit on the fence about whether or not that's a new feature or a bug fix, but it makes it so that Path Auto can handle more types of quotes and more types of hyphens. That issue needs review, probably RTBC, but we could use some sign off from someone else on that issue to make sure that it's all ready to go. Lastly, jQuery UI, I should say, all libraries, we like to make sure that all libraries are updated when we release a new minor release of Backdrop. And I know that we've already updated CK Editor. I think that there was an issue for updating jQuery once, but I can't remember if that's been merged yet or not. I don't think so. I think that it needs work actually, but it's not in the agenda here. But that's another item that we'll probably need to take a look at. jQuery itself has already updated to the latest version, but there's a minor version of jQuery UI that we could update. And so we'll keep track of that in 2493, updating jQuery UI. Whew. All right. Well, that's the hit list of things that we're likely to knock off for 1.8. There's actually some other items yet that are slated for 1.8 that are perhaps less notable. You can check those out by checking out the 1.8 milestone on GitHub. I think Jen's been going through a number of issues over to 1.9 in the past week. And so anything that looks unlikely to be included has probably been moved into that new milestone. That's it for the Backdrop software update. Oh, thank you, Olaf. Also 2269, we'll add a new indicator to the basis theme saying when a piece of content is unpublished. That's definitely likely to be completed here in the very near future. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you guys would like to bring up or talk about regarding 1.8?
I added a couple.
Sorry about this cat. She is going crazy.
Can't hear.
No, she's okay. Okay.
I added a couple of things that aren't related to 1.8 to the agenda. One of them is one of our new contrib maintainers is having a problem getting the module to package properly. And I remember we had this issue recently and I couldn't remember what the fix was for it. I checked the tag and it does have release notes. There's no packaging error. It's just not getting packaged at all. Does the tag name need to be in a specific format? I don't know. Anyway, I put an issue in the agenda. If somebody could take a look at it, it's in the Backdrop Ops Contrib repository, issue number 233. So if anyone has had that problem recently and remembers what the solution is, our new contributor would love some guidance on what is necessary in order to get the packager to run. I looked at it and couldn't figure it out. And then the next item is a conversation that we had in Gitter yesterday or the day before about a plan for better internationalization for Backdrop and whether that was going to be something that we could do in the 1.x cycle or something that might be a good selling feature for getting people to upgrade to Backdrop 2. And so I thought we should talk about that today as well. This is obviously not something that we need to know before 1.8. So if anyone is super eager to go work on pull requests for 1.8 instead, we can do that. But since there was a lot of conversation about it recently in Gitter, I thought maybe it would be good to talk about that today. Okay, so what do you guys think? Do you want to talk about translation stuff? It's kind of quiet. I don't know if that means yes, no.
Yeah, my head isn't in that space at the moment. I'm really focused on trying to get 1.8 kind of knocked out.
Well, I think the reason this came up is because Olaf, was it you that have a project that you have like a 1-year timeline on? Yeah, that's going to need some translation stuff. And so trying to figure out like now whether 1 year from now is like a realistic timeline to get like everything we need translated done was the original question. And my answer was yes, because we can already do all of that stuff in Drupal 7. And so just trying to figure out what of that needs to get moved over to Backdrop seemed like a year was a reasonable timeline for that. But that also, I think, would give us enough time to kind of look at the pieces that we're moving over from Drupal 7, identify any underlying issues that might need to change in Backdrop core, and then come up with potential future plans for how to handle Backdrop long-term about making translation easier, because we know Drupal 7 isn't great. It's good, but it's not perfect. And we have, we want to make it easier for people to translate sites, and we want to improve on that, and trying to figure out what our path forward should be would be good. So right now it's kind of indeterminate, like which way we're going to go. There's been a lot of improvements to the translation system in Drupal 8. There's a lot of increased complexity as well. And so I think we'll need to kind of look at what we really like about translation in Drupal 8, what we really like about translation in Drupal 7. I have a lot of experience with translation going back as far as Drupal 5. There are some parts of that I really liked too. And just kind of pick the best of all worlds and see what we think might be the best fit for Backdrop.
Yeah, so because I brought up this idea or sort of need for one side, I want to say I'm fine if we don't talk about it very long today because of the near 1.8 release. But maybe let me mention shortly what's also interesting for me. It's not only this particular point, internationalization, but also how we manage the development process, because at this point I actually really need, yes, to evaluate if I can use it in 1 year. And that brings me to the point that because we all do it not paid, so voluntary, we can't say so to some people you have to work for this aspect now, for internationalization, for example. But we could, however, discuss if it makes sense to focus development for a certain period on some stuff. So like, I remember there were releases like the UX focused release and so on. And which means that was before my time. So, but I imagine that a lot of people said, okay, now I work on this UX stuff. And there was a common goal to get it in up to a certain release. And I think it's maybe comparable to the Drupal. There are so working groups for, well, there were so working groups for example, internationalization for Drupal 8 and so on. And I think it's maybe a good idea to get more focus to the development. For example, because if not, it happens maybe how I tried to do something with localization, but I wasn't capable to do it, and there were not enough other people who contributed, and so it was a lot of work for nothing at the moment. And and at the moment it's maybe comparable with the media related stuff, because I saw that some people for a time they made some things and then they stopped, and no other people came in, and so also this work, it seems that it's yeah, maybe yeah, there's no real progress, and maybe then after a month other people begin another thing, and that's all. It's not focused enough, I think, in my opinion. And we could discuss, we don't have to do it today, but how we can focus more.
Yeah, I think that in general is like a problem that open source tends to have, where like some people will come in and work on something for a while and leave. And sometimes that work is driven by whatever project they're currently working on. Sometimes it's driven entirely based on what they're passionate on and or how much time they have available. And it is kind of hard to steer something when you have different people with different amounts of time and different focuses. And we're pretty good initially about a lot of our early releases had a specific focus in mind, where it's like, this release is going to be on usability, and this one's on, I don't know, editing, and this one's on site building, or whatever it was. And the last few releases, we've kind of said, well, what are the highest priority issues in the future queue, and let's choose those and kind of build a release around it. This 1.8 release is kind of leading towards like continued file handling stuff, but would have been better had we had a lot of file handling stuff. Now it's going to be, you know, a couple file handling things and a couple other things. But it is very dependent on what people have time to handle. I think, like, for me personally, if I have a project that has a specific requirement, that project helps drive the development in a particular angle. I'm not sure if this will be for you too, or if you're going to have a project that's going to require translation, and that project has funding, now you can hire developers to work on it, and that'll help move that forward too. So it just depends on, you know, like, you have to make it happen, but you also have to like get other people to make it happen too. Like, you can't do everything by yourself, obviously. And I think that this is something that we've identified as an area that needs focus. Like, we need to work on translation, internationalization. I don't have a project right now I'm working on that has it. I know Laren said he had projects that was going to need it in the future. You have problems, you're going to need it. We could find, you know, a handful of people that have the skills to work on these issues and get them done. I think scheduling something might be a good way to do that. Like, if we said, okay, 1.9 or 110 or 2.1 or whatever it's going to be, should be focused on it. That might be a way that we can all kind of make sure we have projects that align with those goals to work on at that time, and we can all do it together, because it definitely goes faster when there's more than one person working on it. But yeah, I think that is a great topic. We should talk about it. Maybe I'll add it into the weekly agenda so it'll show up every week so we can think about it. Obviously, we're going to be busy for the next 2 weeks working on the 1.8 release. I don't want us to forget about it 3 weeks from now. I think it's something we should continue to return to and figure out, like, how we can best allocate the resources we have and make sure things are getting accomplished long term. It's going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is also worth noting that we've been a lot more fragmented as of late, because we haven't put any, well, we haven't had any real consensus actually on things that we should focus on in the recent point releases. Like, even on the roadmap, so the reason I haven't mentioned the roadmap in any recent meetings is because we don't even have items slated out for 1.8 in the roadmap, despite the fact that it's coming out in 2 weeks. And 1.9 is the same thing, where it's like it's all unfocused right now. And I think that you know, stating those things officially on a place like the roadmap and mentioning it kind of creates a focus just by stating it being the goal. And we haven't done that. And I think the reason why we've slipped on this in 1.8 and probably in 1.9 is because we had a number of items that we were repeatedly trying to get done. Reference module is a really great example of it trying to be in like 3 subsequent releases that never happened. And I think that was a little bit discouraging for us to keep putting the same item in every next point release. But yeah, bringing some focus into the next 1.9 release could definitely benefit us. And I'm not sure if internationalization is what the focus of 1.9 will be, but I think putting it on the roadmap for a version in the near future would help that out a lot.
Yeah, I think sort of not officially focus of the last or of the current upcoming release was media and files, but yeah, maybe because it was never stated officially, it was not so clear. For example, also Eugen were very interested to get a lot of things in. So I was in holidays. I couldn't help for a long time. But yeah, I think maybe that could be the next focus for the 1.9 release, or one of the focuses. And then internationalization maybe for the 1.10 as a first idea.
Yeah, that's a great proposal, actually, because we didn't have a focus on media in 1.8 until people started doing it. And basically finishing that work in 1.9 would be a great vector for us to continue on, and then plan out internationalization as a 1.10 item. But that doesn't mean that we can't start working on it right away. It just means that we won't actually put a focus on it until 1.10, or see, now we're already saying 1.10 as though it's going to exist, but what's going to happen there?
Let's just say the next one. I also think like scheduling it 2 releases out could be really good, because that would give us a whole release ahead of time to kind of put our ducks in a row in terms of like, what are the actual issues we're going to work on, like trying to figure out some kind of plan. Give us a whole release to be like, oh, this is related to that, this is related to that. And then when we get to the actual release we're working on, we'll have a list of issues that we know are like tagged for that release number, and we can, I think it'll help us with planning too. So, and that sounds good.
Yeah, and also ask people like we got some great feedback, I think, on my question, and people like OP said, oh, I have some experience, or Larian and so on, so we can also ask them to look at these issues or to give a statement about their maybe upcoming commitment. So one question I can evaluate very good, because internationalization with all the submodules, it looks like a monster in Drupal 7. And there are also some other modules which are even not part of internationalization, which you need, because, and it's also, so I'm also asking how realistic is it to get it done? How complex will it be? Also, when we want to evaluate what to make better, maybe is it a good plan to make it better immediately, or is it maybe a better plan to port it how it is?
Yeah, and in general, I like to say better is the enemy of done. And first, if you can get it done, you can make it better later. But I think like in the process of your particular project, you'll come up with some priorities where it'll be like, okay, I definitely need to translate menus and taxonomy and layouts or something. And then those will be the things that we drive forward, because those are the ones that we've got feedback on right away. And then as we go forward, it's like, oh, well, you know, maybe now we also need to translate books or some other things that are supported in core that weren't necessary for your project. Those will come along later, and the submodules will be ported as needed. And as we're going through that process, you'll identify like, oh, really quickly, there's this problem with translating menus. I also need to have whatever. And then we'll figure out whether that's something that can be fixed in a contrib module solution, or something that needs to have something changed in core. And I think that longer term, having it's hard for us to make these decisions about what to work on without an actual use case, without a project that's using it and running into issues. And then if we have a use case, we can also recommend fixes that you can try and be like, yes, it solved the problem. Whereas kind of doing that in a vacuum where it's like, I think this will help, but no one's actually using it, it's hard to determine whether that's a good fix or not. So.
Good.
But yeah, it's a big project.
Go ahead. Just wanted to say real quick that I was looking at the, well, I can't remember the article now about V8, and one of its selling points was what used to be like, used to require 12 at least modules in V7 is now offered out of the box. And they were referring to being able, having the core of CMS being multilingual from like out of the box.
And I think we need to figure out what that means, and see which parts of that are included, because it could be like we port the I18N module and work on it for a couple months, and then it looks like the path for getting that same solution for Backdrop would be moving that module into core. That could be something we could work on. So I don't know what changes were necessary in Drupal 8 to make all of the translation happen internally, but we should review that as well and see if I'm sure there are things that should be changed in core. But if we could get like a list of what those are that make it not necessary to need those contrib modules, then we can have that same feature. We just need to figure out what the end goal is. So I think the end goal is going to be different, but that doesn't mean the bullet list item for a sales point has to be different. We just need to get a comparable solution that meets the needs for our audience in the same way that Drupal 8 solution met the needs for their audience.
One thing that used to help me in Drupal land when I was doing my testing was the fact that there was this notion of dev versions of things. If we can get a core branch where we keep it in sync with the latest dev, then what I can do is all of my testing, I can do it off of that branch instead of the actual developed branch. And I have found that this is a good way of catching errors or problems really early on. And we can start very simple, like having a small goal to get content translation working first, and then we can move to, because this is the basic thing, and then moving on to menus and taxonomy. The basic would be getting content to be translated.
So that fortunately with working in GitHub, like everybody has that branch, right? Like your clone is that branch, my clone is that branch. So there shouldn't be any like technical limitation to doing that same thing.
Yeah.
It's just a little different workflow.
My idea was more like to get, I had in mind, Weigel is the WordPress guy who was on standby to try Backdrop in real world cases, but what was stopping him, because his main audience was Greek and English sites, what was stopping him from trying it more out was the fact that it wasn't multilingual. So my point is, how do we get more people that are actually interested in multilingual to be involved? That's what I was getting at. Because if we get more people involved, things will get done. Even if it's just testing or bug reporting or suggestions, that'd be helpful. So
what's your recommendation then for that problem? Like give them a Pantheon site with what we do have, or do we need to actually have something that works before we have someone who will help us make something that works?
Well, this is one of the things that I was saying, that I think that V8 moves things a little bit faster because of the experimental modules. we need to get something like that in place. Sort of like, if we don't call them experimental, maybe like, I don't know, core endorsed or something like that.
You mean like contrib modules that are featured, like that issue we have to, yeah, okay. That's something I think, I don't think that, I mean, I don't know what's required for that. I don't know that there's any blocker.
Yeah, it would help reference, it would help multilingual, that's what I think.
Yeah. Okay, will you, let me just actually write that down to do that today. I'll look into that and see. I think I mentioned that there's like on backdropcms.org, we can add a checkbox really easily, but we need to figure out how that affects the sort order for project browser results and for module, like on the modules page and stuff. It could just be that those are all views, and then we would just need to add some styling. But yeah, that should be pretty straightforward.
I have, by the way, another use case, which would be to translate backdropcms.org in different languages. So it's not my idea, but at some point I think Robert Garrigos or someone asked if he could clone the site to make a Catalan version, but he wanted to host it itself. And then the idea came up to translate backdropcms.org directly. I know that WordPress has also its website in different versions or different languages, and that could also help to spread Backdrop in other countries than only English speaking. But I think it's yeah, that could also lead to that more people are interested to contribute, because then yeah, maybe Robert Garrigos makes it for Catalan or even Spanish, and then he sees the problems and what needs to be done. And it's also guaranteed that all people who work for Backdrop, they see what is happening, because they are yeah, more involved automatically because it's their own project. But I think it's yeah, to say to cite a word from the Drupal founder, quite ambitious to do that. So I'm not sure if it's really a good idea, but I think it's a good use case.
It is a good use case. I'm concerned about like the amount of resources we have to work on backdropcms.org are already quite limited, and I would rather have people working on like the localization site than trying to figure out how to make backdropcms.org visible in other languages. I agree. I really want other people speaking other languages to get all of the content. I just feel like that might not be the best use of our resources. And also, if we had people who are willing to maintain translations of the site, like would we want Backdrop to exist, for example, like only in English and then the Catalan version? Or would it be more valuable to have like Chinese or Spanish or something that has a larger number of people who speak that language who we know are already using Backdrop? It's just kind of interesting to be like, well, we didn't have someone who was willing to maintain it, so we can't provide that service. Is kind of a weird decision-making factor. I mean, that's the reality we have, but it's tough. I wonder if there's something we could do as like a halfway, like until we do get to the point where we have enough people to maintain all different versions of Backdrop in translation, whether it's developers or people are just maintaining the translations. We could find another way to make our content available to people who speak other languages already, like using some kind of translate plugin that might like a Google Translate language selection list or something that might be like, we know Backdrop can do translation, but we don't have the resources to maintain that, but we could put a widget on the site, and that might at least be something that will let people read our news pages in the short term.
Yeah. Third use case would be spontaneously would be maybe one of the Backdrop for Good sites, because
Yeah.
I guess some of these organizations may be international organizations and have at least English and Spanish and French or something.
Yeah,
So,
I love that idea. I think that if we could get a nonprofit that we're working on anyway to be one that is a solid use case for a translation, that would, you know, take those 10 hours a month that we're devoting to that project, and it would also benefit Backdrop. So it would benefit the organization that needs it as well as the software itself, which is great. And that might be like, Jeff, once we start getting a lot of people applying for help, that might be a deciding factor in choosing like which project to work on in any given period of time. Be like, are we benefiting Backdrop the project and you at the same time? And if that is, that could be like, you know, another point. So. Great idea.
So we talked for a long time. Good sketch.
I'm actually going to have to jump off. My doorbell is about to ring here any minute. But I'm going to copy some of these ideas into our weekly agenda so that we can keep remembering to talk about them after 1.8, because I think these are great points and we should keep moving forward. Anything else anyone wants to add? Okay. Well, thank you all for your great feedback so far. We've had a really nice, busy, active week, and we will see everyone in the issue queue and Gitter and everywhere else. And again next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.